All right. Again, thank you everybody for coming to the COGCC operator meeting today. I'm Hannah Hickam, your host. And first up will be Mike Leonard with a quick announcement. As soon as I unmute him. There you go, Mike. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Hannah. No problem. I just wanted to bring up a reminder that was brought to my attention this morning when I was talking to some of the field staff, as far as field operations notice, especially notice of frac. It seems that some operators, and we had this situation a few years back, are putting in multiple notices or multiple well notices for the same day on fracs. I mean, I just went through this morning. I saw one that noticed beginning of frac on a specific day for 9 different wells. I think that's a little tough to do unless you've got a really huge amount of crews out there. Please make sure that you're putting in those for the day that you really anticipate the frac to start. Remember that these go to the local government and other people as well. And the other thing I noticed is in Rule 405, it says no Form 42 may be submitted more than 2 weeks prior. I saw some stuff in there as far out as 20 days. Again, these notices allow for us to get out and inspect things. And if you're more than 2 weeks out, sometimes that gets dropped in the notice as well as it does for local government. So with that, that's all I had, unless somebody had any questions about that.
Great, thanks, Mike. I think we're going to take questions at the end, but folks, if you do have questions, just chat them in. We'll capture those and then we'll answer all of those at the end. And then next up is Jane with the web forms release.
Good morning, everybody. We had announced previously that the web form release, the 100% switch from EForms to web forms would happen tomorrow, September 15th. That is not going to happen. We're not quite ready. We want it to be a smooth release. We want it to be 100%. All the forms will switch so that folks aren't having to log into 2 separate systems. So it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in the near future, but I'm not going to set a date until I'm really sure we're going to hit that target. But just watch the website for an announcement for that. What will happen before that is a release of the mission change revisions to the Form 4, and they'll be released in EForms, and that's what this next topic is about. A number of staff members are going to give you a little bit of quick training on those mission change revisions to the Form 4. There's quite a few of them, as you might imagine. So the Form 4 staff is still testing it. And as soon as these revisions are fully tested, we will release them in EForms. And again, there'll be an announcement on the homepage. And I would encourage everyone to, and maybe Hannah, can you drive on our website, please?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is that a pain? Sorry.
No, not at all. Just give me a moment to find the one screen to kill it, and I'll get to another one in a moment. Yep.
So with the mission change rules I think in January or February, we provided specific single points of contact, staff contact for each form. And we are continuing that. So Hannah, could you please click on regulation?
All right.
And then on operator guidance.
All right.
Thank you. Oops. No, I lied. Sorry, forms, go to forms. Gosh, sorry, everybody. So right there in the middle of the top of the forms list, there's a document that lists all of the staff, and yeah, it comes up really tiny, but you can expand it. Thanks, Hannah. So these are the folks that you should address your questions to, whether it's now when we're still in eForms, and then when we do switch to web forms, these are the experts and the single points of contact for form questions by form. Hannah, if you close it. And so they're there as one massive list, but Hannah, could you click on the Form 4 sundry notice? Thank you. But they're also listed at the top of each specific form page. And you'll see that for the Form 4, there are 5 different folks. They're all going to talk to you this morning in a minute when I finish. But, you know, the Form 4 and other forms have different sections that are reviewed by different groups. And so we've designated contacts for the, kind of the parts of the form so that you've got an expert on that particular part of form. So once again, I'm just requesting that you direct all your questions to these folks so we can better handle answers and also take care of issues that pop up with the forms. So that's it on web forms, and I'll let Hannah introduce the staff speakers for this little bit of training on the mission change revisions to the Form 4.
Great, thank you, Jane. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
All right, next up we have Craig Berger, I believe, is going to lead off with the Form 4 revisions training. Just give me a moment to get that ready. And Craig, you can test your mic in that time. There we go.
Okay, how's the volume?
Sounds good. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay, so we're just going to go through this real quick here. I guess we can just go to the next slide already. So in some of the revisions with the mission change rules that relate to the engineering and environmental tab and the engineering issues specifically, there's a couple little changes here. One, you'll see we've had the Bradenhead plan on there for a while. We are adding underground injection control on account of some of the 800 series rules that require notice to the UIC program. You'll probably notice that venting or flaring is no longer a request. This is basically a notice that will go out when you're reporting a venting or flaring incident. So Hannah, if you want to go to the next tab, everything else should pretty much be the same on that tab. On the other tab now is a Rule 502 variance, because staff no longer can approve variances. The director cannot approve variances. They do need a commission order. An example of that with the engineering review group is that we are no longer allowed to approve venting or flaring. So that will require a variance. Next tab, Hannah, or next page. There's a couple of little changes to the H2S reporting. Basically, these two up here at the top, intentional release of H2S gas due to upset condition or malfunction, is basically just a report by the operator. And then the intent to temporarily abandon a well with potential H2S concentration greater than 100 is now also a rule requirement. The rest of the H2S reporting tab is still the same, and you can fill out the H2S reporting tab without checking either of these two boxes up at the top. Next page. So this is basically how we, the changes from what the old form looked like to the new form. So you can see that report of work done is now subsequent report of activity. Request of vendor flare is now venting or flaring 3. We have the new underground injection control. This didn't all end up in the same place as this design tab here. Subsequent well operations with heavy equipment. I think the OGLA group is going to touch on that change. Next slide. And so this is just what was added to the H2S reporting tab. You can just see the two boxes got added up at the top. Everything else is the same. So I think it'll work. We tested it. If you have any issues with the engineering reporting on the Sundry Form 4, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. That was great. Next up, we have Arthur Kopsel, and just give me a moment to make that transition. And Arthur, you can go ahead and check your mic.
Can you hear me, Hannah?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Did I say your last name right? Is it Kopsel? Is that how you say it?
Capsule.
Kopsel, gotcha. I'll say it right next time. All right, and then hopefully this is yours.
Yep, that looks familiar, Hannah.
And you may.
You can go right to the next slide.
Perfect, thank you.
The Groundwater Form 4 has been updated to be consistent with the new groundwater sampling rules that went into effect in January. And most of the updates were just to the text of the form to accommodate Rule 615, which is the new statewide groundwater baseline sampling and monitoring plan, and 907B, which is the groundwater monitoring related to centralized EMP waste management facilities. One big change that was made to how the form functions will be in how it's going to be submitted. In the past, the form was submitted only by API number. The form now can only be submitted by either the location ID or the facility ID number. And the location ID number would be provided through the Form 2A, or a facility ID number for this filling out the Form 4 would come from the Form 28 for the waste management plans. And the form will still be used to request exceptions to previous groundwater sampling rules, such as 318 AF, which is the Greater Wattenberg Groundwater Monitoring Program, and Rule 609, which is the former statewide groundwater monitoring program. Next slide, please. And when the form is accessed, you'll want to go through the web form portal, select new forms, and then once the wizard starts to launch, you'll want to select the O4 sundry notice selection at the bottom there. Next slide, please. And this is where our big change kind of takes place. Once in the form wizard has been launched, the user will have to select the facility location option. It's kind of shown on the left side of the slide. And then once it goes to the next slide, you'll want to enter the facility location number and then select. It's very important to select the groundwater sampling rules 615 and 907 B9 checkbox, and that will get you to the right version of the form. Next slide, please. One thing I got to note is that submitting the form this way will cover all the wells on a location. So if you select the location, this form will be stored in the location. And that way we don't have to go and try and dig through all the individual well file records to find the Form 4 anymore. So it should be a much cleaner, easier way to store the information. And you'll need to make sure you fill out the front part of the form or the contact information in the form before moving on. The next slide, please. And this is kind of the meat of the Form 4, the groundwater sampling. And most of the changes that were made here were just updating it so the requirements will be met for Rule 615 and 907. And you can kind of see in the areas where we updated it here. And then the next slide, please. And this is just the bottom of that same page. And it just shows where it was updated for Rule 615 and 907. And functionally, all these are the same. You just request the exceptions to the rules, just like you always have. It is just exceptions to Rule 615 and 907 have been included. Okay, next tab, please. And the submit tab stays the same, will function the same way. You'll just need to complete that. And next slide, please. And the attachment tab will function the same way as it did before. So any attachments you have, you can attach to the attachment tab. Next slide, please. And I think that's all I have for you. If you have any questions regarding the Form 4 groundwater portion, or the portion of the Let's try it again. The groundwater portion of the Form 4, you can email me. And I think that's all I have, Hannah.
Great, thank you, Arthur. Great
Yes,
job.
thank you.
All right, next up we have Laurel Faber, and just give me a moment to make that transition. Laurel, you can check your mic while I'm doing that.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Well,
Okay, cool.
good. All right, and you may take it away.
All right, sweet. So good morning, everyone. I'm Laurel Faber. I'm the contact for issues regarding the permitting on the Form 4. Most of this is going to be pretty familiar to you because we have shown some of this before. So I'm just going to quickly go through it. So on the well location change as built GPS tab, this tab has been updated so that it now only pertains to changes for a well. If you want to do changes for a location or for an OGDP, those are going to be on different tabs now. So we've moved the ground elevation so that it is closer to the actual surface information, and now it more closely matches the Form 2. Next slide, please, Hannah. We've added a new section to the Form 4 for the change of base of productive zone. So it's going to be closer to the Form 2 now. If the Form 2 was approved prior to January 15th, it's going to be, the text boxes are going to be blank. If the Form 2 has been approved after January 15th, it will auto-populate with some of the information from the approved Form 2. Next slide, please, Hannah. So we've reformatted the safety setback information so that it more closely resembles the Form 2. Next slide, please. So this is the subsurface mineral setbacks. It now also more closely resembles the Form 2. Next slide, please. So this is going to be, we've reformatted the objective formation section so that it can be a little bit more useful to both operators and internal staff. We can now add, maintain, and delete objective formations. When you create a Form 4, it will auto-populate the most recent approved Form 4 or Form 2, and the maintain box will be checked. So if you don't want to change anything, if you don't want to update any of the objective formations, then nothing needs to be done. No actions are needed. You can add or delete an objective formation in this, but at least one needs to be listed. So that should be helpful to both internal staff and operators. And that is all I have for the updates for the Form 4 for permitting.
Great job. Thanks, Laurel. And
Thank you.
next up, we will have Rebecca Treats. Let me just get that up here. And Rebecca, can you test your mic real quick? All right, is that? Oh yeah, that's real good. Sorry for all the pings, guys. Let's see. All right, and you may take it away.
All right, so these are the Form 4 changes for the OGLA group. Next slide, please. So we have added a section for the OGDP. So these are changes to an approved OGDP. It will be on the wizard that that number can be entered. You can also change the name under other, and the some of the other changes that an operator can request on a Form 4 for the OGDP are adding or removing locations from or 2As. You can add some of the plans, amended drilling and spacing units, and there's a text box for describing some of the changes. So this is pretty cool. This is going to be a brand new tab in the Form 4. Next slide, please. Another new tab is going to be the oil and gas location. Again, the wizard allows for the location ID to be entered, which happened before. It will auto-populate the associated OGDP for that location number on the Form 4, which is nice. And then there is a new tab for oil and gas location updates. such as equipment list, safety setbacks, and then there's a text box for further information. Next slide, please. Again, this was stated earlier, there is the Rule 502 variance. That is not something we can approve. It has to go through the commission and there has to be a hearing number for that, an order number. So that's a little different. There is, like I said, the changes for like the names is in the other tab. There's always been the box for documents submitted, but this is something that should be used for any documents submitted, such as if it's going to be a location, you know, a new access road drawing or something like that. And then there's a box for compliance with a condition of approval. So all those, you know, additional, you know, if we need new photos or there's a COA that requires additional documentation, that can be added and it will have a place for the document number. So I'll kind of show you some of it. Next slide, please. So this is when the wizard pops up. So you can see there's the location OGDP, and that's where you can put in the number for the facility, location, or the OGDP. So then that can auto-populate. Next slide, please. So at the bottom of the first tab, this is where there's the location. And this is our first one of our first OGDPs to be approved, and the location ID. So depending on what you're submitting the Form 4 for, whether it's the facility location or the OGDP, that it will determine what auto-populates. Next slide, please. So this is the new OGDP tab. So you can see it's there's a thing for the compliance, what can be changed, and a text box to add anything else that is good information. Next slide, please. This is the other new tab for oil and location updates. It looks similar to what will be on what's on the 2A for equipment list. And the bottom, there's the other location changes. There's a text box there for any other additional information that can be added to a location. Next slide, please. So again, this is the other tab for the 502 variance, that this is an order number. There's the name change, which was kind of the same. And then next slide, please. At the bottom of the other tab, you can see there's the document submitted with a text box of what that document might be, as well as the compliance with condition of approval. You check that, the document number, you'll type that in, that would be like the 2A document number for what the COA is on, and it will auto-populate whether that's a Form 2A, if we put a condition of approval for on a sundry that then has to be done, or somewhere else, that the form number auto-populates. So those are the changes for locations and OGDPs, and it'll be nice that it's all on there. And that's what I have.
Great job. Thank you, Rebecca. Next up, we have John Heil, and just give me a moment to make that transition. Oh, quick. Okay. And John, can you check your sound real quick? Just make sure it's working okay.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Heil, and I am an environmental protection specialist based out of Western Colorado. Today, I will be presenting the environmental revisions for the Form 4 sundry. Next slide, Hannah, please. The 4 environmental revisions can be found under the engineering/environmental tab of the form. During this presentation, all the screenshots and figures will be from the updated web form versions of the Form 4. The 3 main checkboxes on the revised Form 4 that I want to focus on today are the request approval of reuse and recycling plan per Rule 905A3, request approval of alternative sampling plan per Rule 909J6 for this pit, and request that an existing produced water sample from the same formation be used per Rule 909J6 to meet the requirements of Rule 909J1 through 5 for this well. Next slide, Hannah, please. Rule 905A3 allows operators to submit a proposed plan to manage E&P waste through beneficial use, reuse, and recycling by submitting a written management plan to the director for approval on a Form 4. This plan could be submitted for a well, API, facility, pit or tank battery, location, or for an OGDP. The reuse and recycling plan must be included as an attachment to the Form 4. Next slide, please, Hannah. 909J outlines the requirements of produced water quality analysis for each well from which produced water is placed into a permitted or registered pit. Rule 909J6 allows operators to submit an alternative sampling plan to the requirements outlined in Rule 909J1 through 5 for a specific pit. The alternative sampling plan must be included as an attachment to the Form 4. Next slide, Hannah, please. This checkbox is similar to the last one, but is for the specific well that an operator is requesting to not sample per Rule 909J6. In this example, I submitted a Form 4 under a specific API number. Once in the engineering/environmental tab, I scrolled down and checked the request that an existing produced water sample from the same information be used for Rule 909J6 to meet the requirements of Rule 909J1 through 5 for this well. This allowed me to input a pit facility ID that is related to this well. This pit facility ID then auto-populates the grid below with information from other wells that are contributing to the same pit and have been previously sampled by the operator. COGCC staff then uses this information from the grid to determine if 909J6 is applicable in a specific situation. Next slide, Hannah, please. Please let me know if you have any questions about the environmental Form 4 revisions. The 909J6 stuff can be a little confusing and cumbersome at times, but hopefully we can all work through it together. So thank you.
Great job. Thanks, John. And next up, I believe we have Jane. And let me just make that transition. Yes, the designated agent / EForm credentials. And then Jane, I think you had an email you wanted me to show.
Before I go on to the next topic, I'd like to just have a little bit of commentary on all the training that everybody just gave you. It's pretty quick. There's a lot of information. First, thanks everybody for putting those slides together for your respective changes on the Form 4. You probably noticed that some of the slides displayed the web form version of the Form 4. The EForm, the revised EForm version will be released prior to the web form version, but the information is the same as you know, it just looks a little bit different. A couple things I'd like to add about the new 502 variance checkbox. Several of the presenters noted that the rules have changed, that you do not use a Form 4 to request a variance. That only happens with a hearing application. But that checkbox on the Form 4 is the mechanism that we need to get the information from an approved order of the commission approving a variance into the appropriate files, whether it's a well file or a location file, a pit file, anything. You know, the commission order will just be a commission order, but it won't get into the appropriate files without filing a Form 4. So when the commission approves a variance now, the order will include instructions for the operator to file whatever Form 4s staff thinks are appropriate to get that variance information into the well file or the location file. So it has a totally different purpose than it used to have, and it has the order number as one of the required fields and then a brief description of what the variance was for. So it's a whole new deal. It looks like it used to look, but it's not. The other thing is, Hannah, could you please pull up that email I sent you with a snip in it? So I wanted to expand a little on what Rebecca explained about the totally new OGDP tab on the Form 4. The Form 4 will not, in most cases, be utilized to make a change to an OGDP, because an OGDP is approved by the commission. But this is rule, oh gosh, I chopped off the rule number. I think it's 303. Nope, it's 301. So it's rule 301C, number 1. It says operators will file proposed changes to an approved OGDP with a Form 4. And that's what that tab is for. If you want to make a change to an approved OGDP, you utilize that tab, submit that form, and then number 2 happens, the director, which in many cases is staff, will determine what other applications, forms, anything are required for review and approval of your proposed change. So it's kind of a different, it's different from the other ways we use a sundry. All the other ways you say, oh, I'm going to change this. You send in the sundry. When we approve the sundry, boom, the change is made. It's very different with an OGDP, but that whole tab has been added to the Form 4 to accommodate this specific rule, which again is 301C. So just some clarification there, but those presentations were great. Thanks, everybody. So now, what am I talking about, Hannah? Can I see the, oh.
Yeah. You are talking about the designated agent / EForm credentials.
Right. So we have, you folks all have designated agents that you have filed a Form 1A and sent it in to us, and we've approved it to identify the people that are authorized to send forms in for you. And when that happens, you receive EForm credentials. So, and in some cases, a CUA is set up to provide credentials to people internally within your organization. So the question often comes up from operators and with internal staff, and that is, what forms must be filed by a designated agent? Because with everything being electronic, if you give your EForm credentials to someone that you haven't submitted a Form 1A for, they can submit a form. They have access to the EForm system and can submit the form. And so sometimes we see people that we never heard of, and because they put in their contact information, which is great. And then we look up and say, whoa, not only have I not ever heard of them, they're not a designated agent. So now what? Do we process this form? Do we kick it back to the operator and say, look, it's got to be submitted by someone that you've designated as an agent? So in the world of electronics, like I said, it's hard to control who might have the EForm credentials within your organizations. We are going to take the approach that if a form is filed electronically by someone we never heard of, someone gave that person the EForm credentials, someone in your organization, and we're going to accept it. We're going to rely on you to control who has those EForm credentials for your organization and who uses them to file forms on your behalf. And we're not going to try to track down who someone is and ask for a Form 1A for them. It's about you controlling access and distribution and use of your EForm credentials. So that's all. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, everybody.
Great job. Thanks, Jane. Next up, we have Sabrina Trask and John Noto. What happens after the commission approves an OGDP? And here's that presentation. Can you guys go ahead and check your mics real quick?
Yeah, testing. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds great. All right,
Great.
you can take it away.
Okay, there are a few steps now that are added to the process that we wanted to share with everyone. And those happen both before and after the commission approves an order for an OGDP. So next slide, please, Hannah. Okay, these are the things that happen before. Oh, by the way, I'm John Noto. I'm the Oil and Gas Location Assessment Supervisor. So there are a few things that happen in advance of the hearing since we have a new system. Our technical review of the Form 2A and 2B are completed prior to the hearing and prior to the director recommendation being prepared. So after the 2A and 2B are prepared, after that review is completed, the director's recommendation is completed with input from staff. That recommendation notice is sent per Rule 306C to the recipients that are listed in the rule by staff. The recommendation is posted to the e-filing system and on the website. And there was an announcement prior to the previous hearing on how to link to that. And you can also get to that by going through the permits access on the website. The finalized Form 2As are included with the recommendation. Up to this point, prior to this step, only the submitted Form 2A was visible to the public. But now the Form 2A with all the staff's notes and BMPs and everything else is going to be included with that recommendation. And then there's also a public comment consideration memo that staff will prepare, and it will also be attached to the recommendation if there are any public comments. Next, please, Hannah. Okay, so in between this step, the hearing happens. The commission approves an order for the OGDP, and the hearings unit needs to prepare an order and finalize the order text and get the order numbers established. These are posted to the e-filings and to the website. The next step that staff may need to do is if there are any COAs that were ordered by the commission, they will need to be added to the Form 2A, and that way they show up on the location file, and then plus final staff comments. At this point, after these steps take place, and it may take a few days for this to happen, the Form 2A and Form 2B will be approved. Next slide, please. So what it means to, as far as the process for operators and how the timing works, is the Form 2A may not be approved, and we'll say will not be approved immediately after the hearing, because it may take up to 4 days, maybe a little quicker for us to get that order number and the hearings documents into place. Has always now and before, locations cannot be constructed until you have an approved permit, which is the Form 2A. Form 2s are They have a different track now, but as far as as far as staff review, if they're associated with an approved OGDP, but Form 2s may not be submitted until after the Form 2A is approved and location ID is established. If a Form 2 is submitted prior to the Form 2A being approved, it'll be returned to draft, and operators can watch for the Form 2A to be approved prior to submitting their location ID. Next slide, please. If you have questions, please chat them in, or we can take them at the end. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Great job. So this is the end of our agenda, and we'll just take questions for the remainder of the time. Although I don't see any questions, which is weird. But we'll just wait for folks to type them in if they have any. Okay, we have a question. Will additional plan and 2A attachment guidance be coming soon?
And I can answer that. The basic answer is yes. We anticipate there will be some out there. There's a few that are just about ready to be published.
Great, thanks, John. We'll just see if anybody else has any other questions. Okay, there's another question. Is this the official guidance on how the variance process will work? My understanding is that a hearing application is first, then the hearing with the commission, then the order, then a Form 4.
I'll take that. Yes, that's a pretty rough process. I know that a more detailed, like an actual guidance document, is being worked on and circulated and edited internally, and it will have more details. But yeah, you've grasped what I've described. The rules require a hearing application. Hearing applications result in an order of the commission, and in some cases, we will need a Form 4 to connect the hearing and the order to wells and locations and pits. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Jane. And we'll just give a few more minutes to see if anyone else has any other questions. Okay, we have a new question. I think 2 came in. Let me just expand my screen so that it's all in one box. Okay. Just a comment to the first person that spoke about the Form 42 notifications. Is it possible to begin fracking multiple wells on the same day, often with 2 frac crews on location and each crew zippering 4 to 5 plus wells? It is very realistic to have 8 to 10 wells start fracking operations on the same day.
Yeah, it is, but we want to make sure that that's what's happening. If that's what you're doing, then that's fine. If you're starting those 8 to 10 wells that day, but that's not what we're seeing in the field. We're seeing this coming in as all on the same day, and they're only starting, 2 to 4 wells.
Thanks for the clarification, Mike. And the next question is, can the variance request be filed with the OGDP application, or does it have to be separate?
I'll try to answer that. Yes, in some cases, an OGDP or hearing application may request variance from a specific rule or previous order. So in that case, yeah, that it's all wrapped into one. But in many cases, operators are requesting a variance that's not part of an initial application for an OGDP. And again, whenever the guidance document gets done, we'll all have it.
Great, thanks, Jane. And the next question is, can you explain the intent to vent/flare change a little more?
I think Craig had to leave, but I do believe after 2020, the first of 2022, that'll have to be approved by the commission. John's shaking his head yes.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Next question is, will there be updates to the Sundry Form 4? Will there be an update to the Sundry or a new Form 2, Sundry or new Form 2A guidance, or a Sundry or new OGDP guidance created? I think the question or the answer is yes, eventually, right? Okay. Yes, eventually. We don't have those ready at the moment. I don't think we have ETAs either, but we will get those out as soon as we are able to. Thank you for the question. And while we're waiting, I'll just go ahead and put up the ending screen. The next operator meeting will be on Tuesday, October 12th. And then I have listed out some more operator meeting dates. I know those early ones in February and March are weird, but the first Tuesday is the first. So what can you do?
Hannah, to answer the question about the venting and flaring change, yes, Craig did have to leave, unfortunately. On the Form 4, it says venting and flaring, and then in parentheses, it says Rule 903. And so I've just pulled up Rule 903. If you look at it, there are instances, sections of the rule where it talks about filing a sundry. So again, the change to the form is to accommodate what the rules now require. So I would suggest if you have questions, go back to the rule and see how that connects to the sundry. And you can certainly email Craig. He'll be happy to answer that question.
Thanks, Jane. And real quick, just for fun, I'm going to show everybody how to find our contact information on the website. In case anyone doesn't know, this is our main website. And then you just go to About Us. And then over here to staff, I think Contact Us. There we go. And then they're in a kind of order. So the commissioners are at the top and then the executive, and then it's alphabetical order by what type of unit the people are working for. So if you were looking for Craig, you could find engineering down here. And then usually all the supervisors are here at the top. So there's Craig's information if you need it. And I think with that, yeah, it's been a few minutes since anyone's typed in a question, but of course you can reach out to the individual contacts who gave the presentations today for your questions if you have any after right now. But just to wrap up, thank you everyone for being here. And the next meeting is Tuesday, October 12th. And if you want to be added to the operator email list, then there is my email address right there. And I'll just leave that up for another probably minute and a half. But otherwise, the meeting is over. So thank you everyone for attending and hope you have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Hannah.
All right, bye, everyone.